And so, it begins. Dark were the skies and chill was the wind as the land was covered in a veil of malice. Across the hill did ride a dread army of the night, cloaked in mist and fog, prepared to rain down death and destruction upon the land. And the people did cry out for a savior, a noble soul to save them from their impending demise. Just as it seemed all was lost, in strode a mighty hero, clad in shimmering metal from head to toe. Wielding a terrible broadsword, he did cleave his foes in two, smashing their ranks asunder with righteous fury. And when the day was done and the enemy strewn across the fields in pieces, the people did turn to the warrior and say, "We shall name this day in your honor. Speak unto us your wisdom." The warrior said one word that day: epic.
One man, one Murloc, one giant angry badger. This is Blue Plz. It begins now. Yes, indeed, folks. Welcome to Blue Plz here on WoW Radio with myself, TotalBiscuit. The date today is the 10th of April, 2009. I am on holiday, and it is wondrous and wonderful in all manner of different ways. It is 8 p.m. in my country. In your country, it's another time. EST, as I recall, I believe it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Hopefully it's sunny and nice and pleasant over there. My name is TotalBiscuit, and this is Blue Plz. What have we got coming up for you in the show today? Well, the simple answer would be we've got an interview coming up with Ben, a.k.a. the fellow who develops QuestHelper. Yes, indeed. He was not the original developer, actually, which was an interesting fact that I was not aware of, but he picked up development a couple of years back, and he is going to be talking to us a little bit later on regarding the new add-on policy. It's a very interesting interview that we got recorded just a couple of days ago, and we asked a couple of the questions that you sent in via email to themurloc@gmail.com, so thank you for that, and hopefully you will find it very illuminating to hear the discussion from an add-on developer's point of view, which is interesting as well, because he does not share the view of all of the add-on developers. Indeed, there's actually a debate going on within the add-on community itself as to what they should be allowed to do. So yes, this debate is far from over. One might say it'll be interesting to hear his point of view a little bit later on the show, coming up after this particular introductory segment that we call the mailbag. In the meantime, of course, we do have a couple of other things coming up in the show as well. I'll be asking you the question as to whether or not your guild has been affected by the content drought, as in we've had nothing really to play for 5+ months since the launch of Wrath of the Lich King. How has it affected your guild? Has it done the same thing to your guild as it has done to mine, where it's caused some of the members to actually get in each other's faces and get into fights and maybe cause a bit of drama as a direct result of the lack of content? And what level of expectation can you raise against members of your own guild as to whether or not they should be turning up to do this boring content or whatever, or should be enthusiastic or being all they can be and all that kind of thing? It's an interesting discussion. We'll be going on to it a little bit later on in the show. Also, Yogg-Saron and Algernon are not going to be tested on the PTR.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
Blizzard can get 15 minutes of very rare praise a little bit later on in the show, and we'll be discussing, of course, the ins and outs of the mechanics of the World First, and whether or not this is going to change the way that World Firsts work, and hopefully coming to the conclusion that, hey, Yogg-Saron and Algernon are actually going to be hard this time. Wouldn't that be awesome? And of course, your chance to contribute to the show. You can email the murloc@gmail.com for the illusion of choice. Yes, you get to pick the last topic of the show. Email themurloc@gmail.com, or you can tweet me, which sounds more dirty than it should, I must say. Tweet me on TotalBiscuit. You can send me a message there. It had to be a very short illusion of choice if you were tweeting me, I suppose, although I suppose you could do multiple tweets. But yes, I think 6 or more tweets for the illusion of choice is a little bit excessive, so if you're going to do that, you might as well just email me. I do get a lot of people sending tweet replies that are like 6 tweets long. It's like, you should have just emailed me, seriously. You're defeating the point of the exercise. You are violating the principles of Tweeter? You should just call it Tweeter, it would be awesome. You're violating the principles of Twatter. It's horrendous. Now, it's time for this.
That sounds like it's mail time. Here's the mail.
It never fails.
It makes me want to wag
my tail.
When it comes,
I want to wail.
Yes, indeed, it's mail time. Just a quick note, actually. Apparently, our Blue Plz thread on the US forums got tagged by Nethera. So if Nethera is listening, hi, Nethera. Welcome to the show. What a show we have for you today. Right, let us get on with the show. Now, I've had a couple of interesting emails. This one particularly I rather like, and I'm going to read this one. It's from a fellow by the name of Maya. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. He's a level 75 Warlock on Dawnbringer US, and he says this. Dear TotalBiscuit, I've been a long time listener to the show, and one of the subjects that seems to be frequently occurring is anger towards entitled casuals for feeling that they should have everything the hardcore player does. While I am not a level 80 raider yet, I have had multiple jobs at maximum level in the Final Fantasy XI MMO, touting best in slot gear and raided/camped constantly. Where in WoW it seems you feel that everything is handed out too easily, I feel that to some degree it is necessary to keep a large amount of people continuing to play the game. In Final Fantasy, a raid would consist of standing in a small room with 200 to 300 other players, mashing your keys as fast as possible in hopes of being the player that tagged a monster that spawned once a day, or in the case of some mobs, once a week. For sometimes up to 3 hours. If another player tagged the mob first, it was too bad, come back tomorrow/next week scenario. This paired with abysmal drop rates of less than 3% on items that came from scenarios such as the one I just described, made the game unbearable for most players, and when I left the game, my memories of it are almost entirely negative. Final Fantasy XI has been in constant downward spiral for years, and even though the development team is now making concessions to players, it may be a little bit too late. Now, I want to make a brief point before I go on with the rest of his email. Here's the thing. Having the Final Fantasy XI system, and indeed there are a couple of older MMOs that still do this, of having rare items and rare mobs spawn in areas that are non-instanced, sucks. There is nothing hardcore about that. That is just stupid. Yeah? WoW was one of the first games to bring in instanced content, and indeed, during its preview and beta process, it was promoted heavily by a bunch of different magazines and, of course, by them themselves. They promoted the fact that, yes, we have instance content because we want to make content that's challenging for people, but they don't have to compete with other players to see who can mash their button fastest or who lags the least. That's a stupid system. There's not even a question about that. One of the brilliant innovations of WoW is the instancing system. It's great. WoW is based almost entirely around instancing as regards to its endgame content, and indeed a lot of its mid-game content and beginner content also based on instancing, as in you get your own private copy to go in and attempt to achieve the objective, whatever that might be. That's a good thing, and I will never say that instancing is a bad thing, but don't mistake having instancing versus having non-instancing for being casual and hardcore. Non-instance content is not by definition hardcore. There were some world bosses, and indeed still are, in the classic content of WoW, that could be considered to some degree hardcore, and there was a metagame that surrounded that, of hardcore guilds competing to get those spawns. However, that was the minority of the content, not the majority, and Final Fantasy XI fails for the reason that all of this best-in-slot gear and stuff comes from rare spawns, whereas in WoW, there's a couple of rare spawns in Wrath, like, say, the Time-Lost Proto-Drake, but it's non-essential gear. Yeah? It's not best-in-slot, you don't need it, it's just nice to have. It's diversity within rarity, but it doesn't stop you from being the best at what you do. That's the important thing. Being able to get best in slot gear has to happen in instances. It's the same reason that a lot of the world bosses were actually side-grade gear. Like, for instance, you remember the world dragons. They would spawn and they would drop the Hammer of Bestial Fury and the Nightmare Blade. Pretty much side-grade items. They're like Blackwing Lair level stuff. I mean, the hammer, particularly at the time, was awesome, don't get me wrong, but you could get similar items in AQ 20 and 40, which came in soon afterwards. The Nightmare Blade was the equivalent of stuff that dropped in, well, I suppose, what's the name of that one? I can't even remember the name of that stupid sword that drops from Onyxia, but there are a couple in Blackwing Lair that are pretty similar in item level and stats. So it wasn't essential to do that, but it helped. It was pretty cool. So, yeah, don't make the mistake of thinking that rare spawns are hardcore, because they're not. They're just silly. Anyway, it continues. Most people don't want to play games that feel like chores to them, and they certainly don't want to pay money to feel abused. I look forward to doing 10-man raids in WoW, primarily because I don't like the thought of running around with 24 other people. One of the reasons I'm looking forward to it is I'm reading on the boards that the gear drops reliably, and I like the thought that after having leveled to 80, I'll be rewarded for my time spent grinding quests, farming, and grinding rep. I don't feel like I should be cheated out of epics because I'm logged in 24/7. I feel like I've earned them through my playtime. At the same time, I don't feel like I should be rewarded with 100% best in slot / 25-man quality items if I don't want to make that large of a commitment. I want the gear that 25-man raiders have, but if I'm not going to put in the effort to getting them, I don't deserve it. I put a lot of work into my character, and I feel that at the end of the grind I should be able to progress my character at a reasonable pace without twiddling my thumbs waiting for one drop for 6 months. I don't mind challenging content, in fact I prefer it, I just want to be rewarded when I complete it, rather than playing an RNG wait for it to drop. My question is this: if I raid and I feel that I should be getting loot for the levels of raiding that I'm running, does that make me an entitled casual? Well, the answer is no, it doesn't. Not at all. The idea of getting items for raiding is pretty much commonplace. Back in the day, there used to be items that would just basically never drop, and it sucked. And Blizzard did take steps to eliminate that. You'll notice that Nax has quite a homogenized loot table in respect. Obviously, all of the tiered stuff is token, so it's a lot easier to get. Plus, 2 pieces of it can be acquired from buying stuff for Emblems of Valor, and of course Emblems of Heroism if you're counting tier 7, as opposed to 7.5. So you can buy that stuff, and indeed, Emblems of Conquest are going to allow you to buy 2 pieces of tier 8 as well. So you can fill in the gaps that you might not have got just because of bad luck or whatever. But there's a lot of bosses as well that share loot tables, which means the chances of individual items dropping are significantly higher. Also, Nax has a nice variety of weapons and items available. I'm not going to say that the Nax loot table is bad, because it's not. There are a variety of cool items available that can easily be as good. Now, yes, there are best in slot items, like, say, the Turning Tide, or the Torch of Holy Fire. That stuff is best in slot, but you do not need it, necessarily. There are plenty of items that are very, very competitive. I see a lot of people running around with, say, spell damage 461 swords, as opposed to spell damage 520. Now, where there is obviously a difference there, don't get me wrong, the idea is you can acquire items that will let you run the content at a good pace and be competitive. And if you want the best in slot, then you better save your DKP, or you better get enough EG, PG, or whatever the hell you use, Suicide Kings, Angry Kittens, Carrier Pigeons, whichever currency you happen to use at the time. And then you can spend that. And that's the essence of what you're asking for. What you're asking for is to be rewarded for your time spent. DKP and systems like that, that's exactly what they're for. People often associate DKP systems with hardcore gaming. That's simply not true. That was never what it was supposed to be there for. It's designed so that you can quantify the amount of time you spend and be rewarded accordingly. And it allows you to battle against the drop rates, which are sometimes stacked against you, in order to get the item you want. So say you've attended like X number of raids, and Bobby over there has attended Y number of raids. Now X is greater than Y number of raids, and an item that both of you want drop, and you've earned more DKP because you were more reliable and you turned up to the raids. I'm not suggesting that you raid like 6 times a week or anything like that. Indeed, Wrath has pretty much thrown that out of the window. But you are reliable, you're a good guildie, you've earned your keep. Now, Bobby over there might have more time to spend in the game, but he's less reliable, he turns up to less raids, and indeed effort and gear points, or whatever that system's called, actually quantifies that better. And maybe he's been penalised DKP for slacking, or not turning up, or randomly going AFK, and all that kind of stuff. Well, you're the one who should get rewarded with that item, and DKP and all of those other loot systems allow you to do just that. So in reality, DKP is a very casual, friendly system, because it keeps track, and it allows you to make progress. Yeah, it is progressive content, but it's not real content, it's like meta content. You are progressing in a similar way to the way that you build up your reputation. You grind your reputation up. You can do that at your own pace. DKP, you can also do it at your own pace. Admittedly, with DKP and reputation, you don't spend your reputation points, but you do spend your DKP. It's progressive content. You can earn it at your own pace. And eventually, if you save for what you want, you'll get what you want. That's the way that it works. And I think that's a good system. So no, I don't think you're an entitled casual. I think that you've got the right idea. But I think, and this is kind of a case with a lot of people, that there is a little bit of misconception there as to how raiding actually works. Yeah? You don't have to be logged in 24/7. Indeed, raiding has never required that. Back in Classic, there was a lot of raiding going on. Don't get me wrong, and it took a long time to finish a lot of the stuff, but Blizzard have learned from that, and they've changed it. Now, the only problem that I've got with that so far is the fact that the stuff they've brought out so far is not challenging enough. But I'm hoping that Ulduar will fix that. Having said that, Ulduar is massive, and I do wonder how long it's actually going to take to get through there. I have no idea if it's winged in any respect. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But I'll be interested to see whether or not they've just made a great big massive dungeon like they did with Classic WoW, with, say, the original Naxxramas and Molten Core and, to some degree, Blackwing Lair and AQ40. AQ40, by the way, was huge, which is why you had to have mounts to go around it. So yeah, don't worry about that. Just raid as much as you want, and I don't think you're entitled for basically getting your reward for doing your work. That's not entitled, that's the opposite. It's the people that don't think they have to work to get their rewards. It's like, oh, well, I can only play 2 hours a week, I want the same rewards as that guy. No, you don't get the same rewards as that guy. Yeah? You might be able to get some of them if you're doing the same level of content, but if you're not doing the same level of content, you can't expect the same kind of rewards. What you can expect, especially with the difference between 10 and 25-mans, and now with 10 hard mode and 25-man hard mode, is the ability to get rewards that are proportionate to the challenge level and difficulty level of the content you are doing. And the difficulty level has nothing to do with how much time you can spend in the game. That's got nothing to do with that. That is entirely your skill and skill of your raid. It rewards your abilities. And that, as far as I'm concerned, is as casual friendly as you're ever going to get. And I think it's a good balance to strike. And I'm looking forward to seeing Ulduar, and I'm hoping that they manage to nail it. Because if they do, well, what can I say?
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
We'll be right back after this, folks. You listen to Blue Plz here on WoW Radio. Myself, TotalBiscuit. Interview with Ben from QuestHelper coming up right after this break. Enjoy. You're listening to the podcast and archive of Blue Plz. Music was removed due to copyright concerns. If you'd like to hear the music, tune in live on Fridays at 8 p.m. British Standard Time. That is 3 p.m. EST on WCRadio.com. You are listening to Blue Plz here on WoW Radio with myself, TotalBiscuit, and as promised, I have a very special guest in the studio today. He is the inheritor, one might say, and the current developer of the QuestHelper mod, incredibly popular mod, and his name is Ben, and he joins me in the studio right now. Ben, welcome to the show.
Hi there, it's good to be here.
Excellent. Now, the reason we brought Ben on today is that over the past few weeks, if you've been listening to the shows, and if you haven't, then what the heck have you been doing with your life? You will have heard some debate regarding the new Blizzard add-on policy. Now, what we want to do today is to provide an interesting perspective on the change to the add-on policy and how it affects add-on developers by bringing on one of the biggest and most popular add-on developers in the WoW community to talk to us about his views on this particular subject. But first, we should probably talk a little bit about QuestHelper. So, tell me a little bit about QuestHelper and why exactly you chose to continue its development, because you weren't the original developer, were you?
No, I wasn't. The original developer was someone whose name I'm not quite sure how to pronounce. It looks like S. Marriott. And I think, from what I've heard, that he started it as sort of a research project to learn Lua and to get better with it. Okay. And he got bored and he left. And I was taking a road trip and decided to start an alt in World of Warcraft. And people had told me about this thing called QuestHelper that showed you where to go for quests and automatically told you, the fastest route. And I thought it sounded really cool. Mm-hmm. So I tried it out, and it was really cool and really, really buggy.
Ah.
And that's why I decided to take it on. It sounded like a cool thing, it really fits with my skills well, and I thought, hey, this is neat, but I can make it better. Let's see what I can do with it.
Indeed. Now, there has been a little bit of controversy surrounding QuestHelper, from what I've seen. There seems to be something of a schism in the WoW community and player base as to the use of QuestHelper. Some people, for some reason, treat it as a cheat. They actually believe that it's a way of circumventing the natural game mechanics. Some people, on the other hand, will basically effectively swear by it. They think it's a wonderful mod. So, What would you say to the people that claim that it ruins the play experience or somehow harms the game environment?
Well, first off, I have to mention that when Wrath of the Lich King came out and I was questing in Northrend, I turned QuestHelper off, because I actually wanted to read the quest text, and I know from experience that if I have QuestHelper on, I'm not going to. So in some way, I think that if you think the quests are important, if you think the lore is important, you really shouldn't be using QuestHelper the first time through. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, some people don't care about those. I don't really think it's my place to say that, hey, the quests, you have to read the lore, you have to follow the exact progression of these incredibly terrible plot lines in Classic. Because,
yes,
let's face it, they're terrible.
Yes, they absolutely were. I mean, Wrath really did do a lot to improve that, I would say. And personally, I did read some of the quest texts, and that's not something that I've ever done before. I think they certainly did a better job of immersing players in the lore in Wrath of the Lich King than they have previously. But what do you think WoW could do better to immerse the player into the game and into the quest lines and into the story, so that perhaps add-ons like QuestHelper are not so much in demand?
Well, there's two really different aspects there. One is the story, and the other is the quests themselves. A lot of the classic quests do a reasonably good job of having story, but the quests themselves are so impenetrable and so incredibly hard to do that you need something like QuestHelper just to tell you where to go. I mean, the Mancrick's Wife quest is infamous for that.
Yes, indeed.
So, they've been better in both of those, but I fundamentally feel like you can't jam plot down someone's throat if they don't want it. Someone who's leveling their 6th character from Northrend, they don't want to read the quests. They've read them already. They're just not interested. I don't think you can fix that. I don't think there's anything you can do about it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Okay. Now, let's get on to the meat of this particular interview, because this is what I've been wanting to hear, particularly from your perspective. Indeed, I've heard there is actually a little bit of debate on this within the add-on community itself.
Yep, there is. There's people from all different positions.
Right, so let's start off with your position then. What's your opinion on Blizzard's brand new add-on policy?
Well, I think it's kind of complicated. I think they probably have the right to do what it is they're doing. I don't think they should be doing it. I think that overall the problem is that they're discouraging people from making new add-ons. They're discouraging people from contributing to the community. And they're doing so for reasons that are, I wouldn't say bad, because we don't know what they are. It's been a complete stonewall.
Yeah, so you have absolutely no idea, or even you don't even have any theories as to why they'd have done this?
Oh, I have plenty of theories. I've heard several reasonably good theories. One person has told me that if they had left this in, if people could continue making money off World of Warcraft add-ons, and at some point in the future they broke what they did, then I could say sue them because I'm not making money. I, of course, wouldn't, but some people might, and maybe they're afraid of that. It's possible.
Yep, that's certainly a possibility. Now,
I've also heard, let me give a few other examples here. One person pointed out that they have an exclusive advertising contract with Microsoft, and it seems that they're considering donations to be a form of advertising. So maybe they think that asking for donations violates their contract with Microsoft. I don't think it's a very good reason, but since they haven't told us what the reason is, I can't really say if it's true or not.
Indeed, that does sound a little bit odd there, I must say. Well, some people do actually claim that some of the more militant add-on developers against this particular policy are simply trying to profit off of other people's hard work, and that they view Blizzard's game as, kind of an untouchable piece of, thousands, hundreds of thousands of man-hours of coding, and that anything related to the game itself, nobody should be able to make a profit off of it. How would you respond to that?
It seems kind of silly to me. I mean, you have sites like Wowhead, like Alakazam, like all the major database sites, like all the fan sites, like, the WoW Radio that I'm talking on right now.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And banning all of those from making money on it seems very short-sighted and very silly, because people do this because they love it, but they keep doing it because they can make a living off it, because it pays the bills, and because they love it. But if it doesn't pay the bills, you can't live on love. It doesn't work.
That's true. I mean, would you say that there was a difference between, say, a website, a fan site that has maybe advertising on it, and a add-on that has a donation link in-game?
Not really. I mean, there's slight difference in where the money comes from, obviously, but fundamentally I think it's the same thing.
Now, couldn't it be said, though, that since it's Blizzard's game and you're feeding off of Blizzard's API, that, you mentioned earlier that they can do it, and, should they be able to do what they like? I mean, let's face it, it's their game, and they do have the legal right to do this, so shouldn't this be something they should be implementing without any fear of backlash or reaction?
It's sort of hard to say. I've always been a little bit uncertain where the line is between something you should be allowed to do with software and what you shouldn't be. I mean, I think most people at least, would agree that something like Glider should not be allowed, which very directly influences the game state. But I think people would have a really hard time arguing that, one of the little plugins that displays your health on a little window on another screen should be disallowed. It doesn't really hurt gameplay at all. It's something that happens completely on the user's computer. And the question is, can Blizzard ban me from making a thing that pops up on someone's computer that they have voluntarily chosen to put there saying, hey, give me money? If I make an add-on whose sole purpose is to pop up a screen saying, please give me money as someone installs it, have I actually done anything wrong? I don't really think so. It's their decision. I'm not forcing it on them.
So you think that the WoW community should vote with their feet when it comes to add-ons, and that they should be the ones making the call on whether or not something is acceptable?
Yes, absolutely. I've heard from people who said that my little donation request really annoyed them and they got rid of QuestHelper. And okay, they don't want it. I'm not going to force it on them. But that's their decision.
So we still haven't really come to a conclusion as to what Blizzard's motivation might be for changing this add-on policy, and we've heard a couple of theories, and perhaps one of the more outlandish ones is that Blizzard intends to start releasing professional-grade add-ons for micropayments. So what do you think to that? Do you think that's just all completely, I wouldn't say a pipe dream, but kind of made up?
It seems like it would be a bad idea to me. Blizzard has been very careful to make sure that you have World of Warcraft and you buy it as a unit, and then you have World of Warcraft. And I think if adding little micropayments in would start really diluting what they've done with World of Warcraft. People would start saying, oh, he's only good because he has the raid assistant thing that he's paying $2 a month for Blizzard. I don't think Blizzard would do that. It seems like a bad idea on many levels. So, it seems unlikely.
Yeah. Well, your add-on solicits donations in-game. Yeah, via a friendly reminder, one might say. And yes, a few people found it annoying, or so they claimed. But there's a few select add-ons, and one of them actually could be considered your direct competitor, and I'm referring, of course, to Carbonite, that provides a premium version. Now, what would you say, bearing in mind that obviously you don't have a premium version, that the difference between a premium version and a version that solicits voluntary donations would be, and should one be allowed and the other not, or should it be a completely allowed, or a complete blanket ban? Where's the line get drawn on that?
I honestly think they should both be allowed. I think that if someone wishes to pay someone money to write code for them, I don't see any reason to ban that. I never used Carbonite myself, but from what I heard, it was reasonably well built. And, you can do worse than having a competent competitor. It's certainly not something I ever complained about. I can see why Blizzard would dislike people having subscription models, but I think that fundamentally it's something that is good. I think it helps their game.
Yeah, well, I mean, from a legal perspective, of course, it is a legal minefield to deal with pay add-ons, and particularly, of course, since Blizzard owns the API, they do have the right to set in place a terms of service agreement. The question, I suppose, comes from a moral standpoint more than anything. At what point do you think that it ceases to be okay to make money off of Blizzard's product?
I think it ceases to be okay at the point where you're actually modifying Blizzard's data in a way that Blizzard is not okay with. Like Glider, for example. If you're hacking the client, if you're botting, then that's uncool. If you're just providing stuff within the UI framework, I think that's sort of by definition cool, because if it wasn't, they just modified the UI framework so it was impossible. Neither Carbonite nor QuestHelper actually moves the player around or fights, so I don't see a problem with it.
Fair enough. Well, here's a question then. If you had the opportunity to completely rewrite the add-on policy, then what kind of clauses would you insert into it, and what would be your overall objective in presenting this add-on policy? What would you be shooting for? What would you be aiming to happen with it?
I think number one would be, from a legal perspective, would be to make sure that people can't sue Blizzard. I just have a clause in there saying you accept that Blizzard can do whatever they want with the World of Warcraft client and you're not going to sue them. That's just number one. Beyond that, I really would not restrict what people did with the client on their own terms. I think that I just have it be a wide open, as long as you're not hacking Blizzard, as long as you're not actually violating the terms of service, it's all good, have fun.
Now, do you think Blizzard actually does enough to support and recognize the add-on community? We've seen that certain add-ons and certain functionality have been integrated into WoW over the course of a few years as Blizzard UI functions. Do you think that Blizzard simply perhaps allows the add-on community to exist for that purpose, just to kind of fill its gaps? And do you think it does enough to thank them more than anything, I suppose?
I don't think Blizzard does anything to thank the UI developers. There is a mini QuestHelper that's showing up in patch 3.1 where it shows little tooltips on mobs in a similar way that QuestHelper does, and I haven't heard a single word from Blizzard saying even thank you for doing this. The closest it's gotten is apparently at the Game Developers Conference, one of the Blizzard execs mentioned that they were basically copying QuestHelper, and that's sort of annoying, you know? But I had never seen Blizzard say anything along the lines of, this add-on is really cool, so we're implementing it. Thanks, guys, for the idea. We appreciate it. Have some free game time. Even that would be something, and it's just complete stonewall.
Indeed. And has it been a stonewall for the past 4 years? Has Blizzard ever actively gone out of its way to interact with the add-on community?
There's certainly a lot of interaction. Several of the major developers show up in the community and talk to us, and that's very appreciated. I don't want anyone to get me wrong on that. We definitely appreciate having people there talking to us. But it's sort of this weird quasi-allowed thing where, yes, add-ons are okay, but it's always a little bit rocky on whether they're going to allow this particular add-on or not. But maybe that's just from my point of view. Obviously, QuestHelper is influenced by this a lot more than others are. Maybe other people would have a different viewpoint on that.
Indeed. Well, thank you, Ben, for coming to the studio today. Most illuminating. Hopefully all of the listeners enjoyed that. I'm sure they did. Is there anyone you would like to perhaps give a shout-out or message to before we end the interview today?
Not especially. Just for anyone who used QuestHelper or for anyone who donated, I just want to say thank you, because I read all the donation messages, and you guys have let me work on QuestHelper as a job for quite a long time, and that was very cool. So, thank you, everyone.
Excellent. Ben, thank you very much for coming to the studio today.
Welcome.
And ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Blue Plz here on WoW Radio with myself, TotalBiscuit. We'll be right back after this. Enjoy. You are listening to Blue Plz here on WoW Radio with myself, TotalBiscuit, on WCRadio.com. If you haven't visited our website, then I must wonder why. Because we have this brand new website with a inbuilt live Flash player that will play archives, the Flash stream, wherever you are in the world, and all these other fantastic features. So go check it out. It's our brand new version 4 website developed by Cadwallian, Tide Caller, Spirit Wolf and Company. It's at WCRadio.com. And if you've just tuned in, as I know that some of you have, then welcome to WoW Radio. We are a talk radio station based around the World of Warcraft. We play music, we do in-depth discussion on various aspects of the World of Warcraft, and you want to check out our extensive back catalogue. Our extensive bat catalogue is great as well. There are many bats left side. You know, so many bats. But if you'd like to check out the back catalogue, you can do that too. It's next to the bat catalogue. And we have thousands of hours of shows for you, and you can download them all for free from our website. Isn't it great? Now, enough of the shameless self-promotion, and back to the show. I had an interesting run-in, let's just say. Picture the scene. I haven't logged into WoW for like 2 weeks. The reason being that I've had no motivation to do so. I've got mostly best in slot gear. I'm ready for Ulduar, but to be honest, I could go and pursue the rest of the gear, but my motivation simply wasn't there, because I'm sick of the content. I did Nax. Yeah? I did Nax before Wrath came out. I did most of it, well, at least a good chunk of it anyway, at least I think it was about half of it, just over half, in Classic WoW, at level 60, and it was challenging. And I did the rest of it at level 70. It was actually still challenging at level 70. We did it in a group of pug. Well, I'd say it was a pug, but it wasn't really. It was a rough group of players from old school raiding guilds that went and did it. And it was still a lot of fun. It was still quite challenging, considering. Surprisingly so. And I would actually say more challenging than it is now at level 80, which is supposedly level appropriate. So, I've got very little time for it. The only thing which really interests me at the moment is Sartharian 3 Drakes 10-man, which is the only thing that our guild has not done. Mainly because some people don't have the motivation to actually do it, and because it's a very tricky encounter. Very few people have actually done Sarth 3D 10-man. Very few. Way, way less than have done Sarth 3D 25-man, and even then, only about 14% of current raiders have done Sarth 3D 25-man. So imagine that. Way less than that. And that's not a lot to begin with. So, I haven't had the motivation. I've been busy playing other stuff. I've been playing a variety of single-player games as well as progressing a lot in EVE Online, which is a game that I'm enjoying very much. And will certainly not replace WoW because it's a different kind of game. It's a game that you can play alongside WoW. Both complement each other in some respects quite nicely. And indeed, if you want to break from one, the other is a great place to go. EVE is the other side of the spectrum. It's a hardcore title, whereas WoW is casual-friendly, and it's a very static world, whereas it's a very dynamic world over there. I described it in last week's show. Actually, it wasn't last week's show. It was Octal... Was it? Yes, I believe it might have been. Octal and Horak versus the World, which I covered on Sunday. You can check that out on WCRadio.com. It was TotalBiscuit against the Planet. Some people seem to like that for some reason. And I described the difference between WoW and EVE as... And this is something that EVE itself describes it as, the difference between a theme park and a playground. Now, I'm not going to talk much about EVE, or indeed any more about EVE whatsoever, because it's got nothing to do with the topic at hand. But what it does demonstrate is the fact that when I came back after this kind of 2-week hiatus, I'd signed on to raids as, like, not attending, yeah? And I came back, and we were just chatting away, and I was just saying, you know, guys, is anyone else just so sick of things right now? Are we just... We really on Ulduar now, you know, they're so desperate to get into Ulduar and try some new and challenging content. And I'm like, you know, I can't even show up for raids because I can't face 4 hours of raiding. Even if it is just one night a week of content that I absolutely friggin' despise now. That it's just so dull, and it's so samey, and it can be face-rolled. It requires no effort. I remember back in TBC, even some of the Tier 5 content, and indeed even some of the Karazhan content, would bite you in the ass if you weren't paying attention. You could still screw up on Netherspite, you could still screw up on Malkazar, you could still screw up on Shade of Iran. I've seen some people screw up on Chessevent. But then again, they weren't very good at anything, including perhaps breathing, looking forwards, and moving under their own power. But I'm not feeling that with Nax, and I'm not really feeling that with Sartharian either, even with 2 Drakes. Sartharian 2 Drakes is just your standard run-of-the-mill farm content, whereas Sartharian 3 Drakes there's no point in really farming Sartharian 3 Drakes because it doesn't really give a massive benefit after the first couple of attempts. I suppose you could try and get a couple of Twilight Drakes, but that's really about it. So Sartharian 2 Drakes is our standard, we'll just roll through it. Malagos is mildly challenging, but it's also an 8-minute fight. So you can't really argue that Malagos is worth and looking forward to on a weekly basis when it consists of 8 minutes of mild enjoyment. I would say 4 minutes of mild enjoyment, and then the rest of it is a vehicle section, which is awkward, and I don't like it because it breaks my UI. And I get these tiny little buttons at the bottom because I use bartender, and it's just doesn't work out so well. If I wanted to play a rogue, I'd just go and play my rogue. I made this argument before. Now, upon mentioning this, one of the other mages actually got in my face about it and said, you should be showing up, you should be dedicating time to the guild and all this kind of stuff, you should be helping out the newbies. And like, well, do I really need to be there to help out the newbies? I mean, for God's sake, you can face roll your way through Naxxramas 25-man with way less than 25 people and not have any issues at all. And besides, our guild's got like 100 plus members. You're telling me we can't get together with 25? I was like, and he's like, oh, we've been having issues over the last couple of weeks. It's like, well, why do you think that is exactly? Why do you think you've been having issues getting attendance? Well, I remember another time we used to have issues getting attendance, and that was the pre-TBC raid apathy. It was what happened halfway through Nax that actually killed the very guild that I am currently in, originally. That was its first incarnation. It killed it. Why? Because we got to the situation of looking at the stuff we could get in Hellfire Peninsula, seeing that it was better than our raiding gear, and it's like, well, what the hell is the point anymore? Really? Seriously, what is the point? I don't understand. And a bunch of people just stopped playing this, like, well, I'm just going to wait on TBC. What's the point? And personally, I wanted to get some more progress in, but right now, there's nothing that we can do progress-wise, so it's kind of like the other way around. It's like, yeah, we can get items, but we can't progress anymore because there's nothing to progress through. And our guild is not a believer in achievements. I mean, our GM hates them, and I would agree with them. It's like, oh, should we do achievements? No, because we can't be bothered, because it's silly. So, we are one of the many old-school raiding guilds that don't subscribe to that particular method of content delivery. And that is entirely, of course, our choice and right. So, we got into this argument, and it was kind of a sad state of affairs, because I'm wondering, well, this is what happens when we have nothing to do, when we don't have a common purpose to bind us together and keep us attending on week-by-week basis. Let's face it, raiding can be fun, but there are elements of raiding that are tedious, but we deal with it because raiding overall is a very rewarding experience. Both in a very physical sense, in the way that we get items from it, and in a mental sense, in the sense of a social kind of environment. A social competitive environment with 25 people cooperating to overcome a common goal is a very positive way to play. Co-op gaming is getting very popular lately, way more so than it used to be. A couple of years ago, co-op gaming was dead, and right now, co-op gaming seems to be the way to go, and I'm very happy with that, because I think co-op is a fantastic way to play games. Raiding epitomizes the apex of co-op gameplay for me, certainly in an MMO perspective. I think it's great. But if you don't have that purpose, then people start to get at each other's throats. And it's something I described last week and the week before when I was talking about achievements, and achievements being a catalyst for conflict within the guild, because there are some people that want to do them and there are some people that don't. Now, introducing this additional meta element to raiding introduces an element of conflict and disagreement within a guild raiding environment. Whereas previously it was very simple. You know, I'm saying, like, I'm being a bit nostalgic and waxing here. It's like, oh well, the good old days, I remember when it was just items and boss kills. Items and boss kills. That was what we were there for. And now it's like, oh well, if you don't kill the boss with 7.5 raiders standing on your head with both hands tied behind your back, then we haven't done it right. And half the guild wants these merit badges for some reason, and half of them don't. So when we don't get it, people get very upset. Like, for instance, we had an issue where people said, oh, well, let's go and get 100 Club for those who haven't got 100 Club. So, like, well, okay, I suppose. I mean, we don't really care. But some guy had Frost presents on, and therefore we failed 100 Club. And people started going nuts, at least a small portion of the raid guild. It's like, oh, we failed 100 Club. I want to get 100 Club this week. It's like, why? And I suppose I can understand that they personally would have this particular goal, but it's not a shared goal. And that is a problem. Because when you have divergent goals, and when people have different aims that do not consist of simply killing bosses and getting loot, then you run into social problems within your guild, and then you get conflict. Now, I suppose the question would be is how much of this can you lay on Blizzard for not bringing in enough content initially, and how much can you lay on the strength and the infrastructure of the guild? And it is a shared responsibility. Some guilds survive through thick and thin, regardless. Whether that be because of the way that they're structured, or the people who are involved in them, or their leadership, or just the individual attitudes of the players. They can survive. And other guilds are very turbulent. There might be a lot of conflict, a lot of disagreement going on there, but they're often a very powerful raiding entity, as in, because they're very driven, these people. These are the kind of people that get together in these guilds, the kind of egos that start clashing, but those egos encourage the players to be all they can be and to push for 110% all the time when progress is involved. When it's not involved, then they start getting at each other's throats, which can be rather risky. Now, I would love to hear from you guys as to whether or not you have run into similar issues. So email themurloc@gmail.com and send me a Twitter on twitter.com/TotalBiscuit. You can do so. Email themurloc@gmail.com with your opinions and your anecdotes on this particular topic. You can tell me a little bit about your raid apathy. Did any of your guilds suffer that? And do you think this is something that we're running into now? This is a rather unique situation here where we're running into a raid apathy kind of scenario, yet we're not at the end of an expansion, not even close. We've got stuff to look forward to. It's kind of like a reverse raid apathy. Like I was saying earlier, pre-TBC, progress could have still happened, but the items were basically viewed as worthless. Whereas now, we need the items, but there's no progress to have. We want to all try and get best in slot so that we can be the most competitive in Ulduar. And yet we don't have the motivation. So this is a unique scenario. So how much does it rely on Blizzard? We've been through the argument before, and I don't want to repeat it, that missing an entire tier of raiding cause real problems. But I think what Blizzard does need to realise is that having easy content, and this is what they were looking to do, yeah? They were looking to have this as Raiding 101 to encourage more people to raid. The problem is, while you may have basically bottom-loaded the raiding scene, you are skimming off the top. Because the better players and the more experienced players, now even the average kind of raiding guilds, are losing the will to raid. Because they've simply done it all before. This is the other side of the coin. There can always very real consequences to making a decision like this, where we say, right, we're going to make the content easier to support these other, this other level of play. And I understand that it was with the best of intentions. Don't get me wrong, I do not believe that Blizzard has bad intentions when it comes to this game. Why would they? It's illogical. I'm not one of those people who say, oh, well, Blizzard hates this, Blizzard wants this to happen, Blizzard is deliberately destroying this. No, they're not. They're not at all. They're trying to go towards a particular goal. The problem is that sometimes they don't entirely see the wood for the trees. They don't look at the full scope of what can happen. And I think what they should have seen here is that the easier style of raiding and the lack of variety and the lack of content causes friction within guilds. It's a catalyst for conflict. And you think, well, what's that got to do with Blizzard? Surely they can't control that. Well, this is the thing. Yes, they can. A little bit of social engineering is important. You can affect what your players think and how they interact with each other. It happens an awful lot. This game is a social game primarily. Therefore, it is important to ensure that the social interaction between groups of players is as positive and as productive as humanly possible. Because if it's not, then that element of hostility can cause people to leave the game. It is a very real concern in a game that is as casual friendly as WoW, that players realise that they can deal with and play on a regular basis with another group of players without trying to kill each other. And by kill each other, I mean so in a social sense, as opposed to in arenas or battlegrounds or anything like that. It is not healthy. And that's something that Blizzard has got to watch out for in future. Remember, all of your content is going to cause a reaction in players, and that reaction can cause a cascade effect within a group. It can cause disagreement, it can cause a schism to occur, it can cause friction, and it can cause conflict. So watch out in future for things like that. Because yes, you are somewhat responsible for that. And what I will say to guilds, it's difficult to say grin and bear it. I know how hard it is to keep going back and doing the same thing week in, week out for 5 months. Guildies have got to watch out, because some players will simply leave and do other things because maybe they've got limited time. I don't want to be playing WoW right now in the current raiding scene. I want to be playing with the old school raiding guild, and I want to be playing with Ulduar when it comes out. That's what I will play, and I'll be back with a vengeance at that point. But you may have to accept that a temporary hiatus might be healthy for people, because raid burnout is the worst. I've seen it, I've experienced it, no doubt some of you guys have as well. Give them a break. Don't make demands of people, because they will get hostile and they will leave and they'll get very defensive, and it's just unpleasant. My name is TotalBiscuit and you're listening to Blue Plz here on WoW Radio. I will be right back after this. Enjoy. You are listening to the podcast and archive of Blue Plz. Music was removed due to copyright concerns. If you'd like to hear the music, tune in live on Fridays at 8 p.m. British Standard Time. That is 3 p.m. EST on WCRadio.com. Let's face it, everywhere you go, you see adverts for Ventrilo server providers. With so many to choose from, how do you make the decision about which is right for you and your guild? To help you with the decision, we brought in WoW Radio's very own bleeding-edge hardcore raiders to show you which provider the world's top players trust.
Loot the stupid car hound!
No. Tank it over there. You're setting the raid on fire.
Someone pulled ads, guys.
Oh, for God's sakes. Heal the tank. Heal the tank.
Hey, guys, it's okay to DI the tank, right?
Why are you smiting and not healing?
Is that a halibut? Are you DPSing with a halibut?
Leave George alone. You'll hurt his feelings.
You named that halibut?
Guys, I think we're wiping.
What gave you that idea?
Well, we're all standing in the graveyard arguing. UGT Ventrilo servers, the only choice for the elite of the elite. Hi, I'm TotalBiscuit, the best and sexiest mage on the planet. When you're like me, you don't have downtime between raids and promotional photo shoots. That's why I use UGT Ventrilo servers. I don't have to get my hands dirty trying to fix a broken server, because it was never broken to begin with. UGT servers provide crystal clear voice communication with excellent hands-on support to make sure your server is always up and running. Not only that, their prices are so low, I was able to use the extra money to buy this £32 salmon. What? You didn't think I was going to be outdone by Dustin, did you? Hey guys, want to run some BRD? Get your premium quality Ventrilo server from UGTservers.com. Be the best. Well, second best. You are listening to Blue Plz here on WoW Radio with myself, TotalBiscuit. I've noticed that some of you aren't in our IRC chat room, and that is unforgivable. IRC to MMOIRC.com, hash or pound WoW Radio if you have an IRC client. If you do not, head to WCRadio.com, click the chat button on the top of the screen and get involved in the discussion. And I must say, I'll give credit to my listeners here, one of the best discussions I've seen in a long time. Very, very intellectual, very respectful for other people. Good, you're not killing each other. That's always a good thing. We'll wait for later for that. That could be the entertainment for the after-show party. It's great. So yeah, get involved in the discussion. It is happening in our IRC channel, and much useful information is posted there, so it is very handy to be in there. That's the chat button on the top of the screen on WCRadio.com or IRC.MMOIRC.com, hash or pound WoW Radio in your IRC channel. I need to get a button that I can just recite that with. It would make it much, much easier. Now, I've got a couple of replies in. I say a couple, that's a blatant lie. I've got tons. For the is your guild burning out on content debate that happened in the previous segment. And after that, we're going to be talking a little bit about the last boss of Ulduar and his last boss of Ulduar. So, this one's from Tom Moulton, and he says this. Our guild has recently lost 3 players because they were upset that the rest of the guild weren't as driven to get achievements as they were. Raiders have stopped showing up because they are tired of the current content, so we've had to run 20-mans for most nights. That doesn't make it more fun, obviously. We've had a solid progression guild all the way through Sunwell, but ever since Wrath, we've been slowing down because our guild isn't motivated. We're all getting burnt out, and I'm worried that by the time Ulduar hits, we're not going to have enough interested raiders to clear the content. Now, again, this is what I'll say to anyone like this. Don't worry, I've been there. I understand. Our guild is having similar issues. Take a break. Suggest it to the guild management. It's like, right, understand this. You do not need best in slot to do Ulduar 25. Yeah? You don't. At all. Blizzard has already said that. Reasonable gear is fine. And if you are skilled, even better. You're going to need even less gear. So you're going to get brand new gear, and you're going to be doing brand new encounters in an instance that looks like to be one of the best designed raid instances Blizzard has ever put out. You're going to have the opportunity to play that. Until that time, take a break. You know, maybe do Sarth and Malagus and VOA, assuming people are missing pieces of 7.5 for some reason every week. You know, you clear all that in 30 minutes. Just do that, and then don't do anything else. Don't run Nax. Don't do anything else. Don't go for achievements. Just take a break. Go play something else, or go play an alt, or whatever. Go do some PvP. Something that you like doing. Something that you're having fun, or maybe you haven't tried before. Maybe go try another game for a while. There's nothing wrong with trying out the competition. You know, Blizzard should not be afraid of the competition. Blizzard are on top. The competition, indeed, can often help alleviate some of the issues that you're having with WoW. Were it not for Eve, I'd have quit WoW by now, because I'd have burned out on it completely. As it stands, my sub is active, and I log on infrequently. I wouldn't have done that thanks to, you know, if I didn't have EVE Online to kind of play as my other alternative game in between big raids. So just bear that in mind. Now, competition is not necessarily a bad thing. Go try something else, go have a little bit of fun, and you can come back refreshed and ready to raid. I've got another one here from Risiki, level 80 Blood Elf Paladin. He says this: Hey TB, I have lived out this problem when my guild got killed because of the lack of content, and I really felt that Blizzard should hurry up and get that patch out here. But on the other side, I don't want Ulduar to suck Kodo ass. As a raider, I really hope that Ulduar, when it comes out, will prove to be a more challenging raid than Nax has proven to be, seeing as you can pretty much do all the raid content in Wrath in one day. Could I get a shout out to my new guild, Hand of Hades, on Frost Whisper EU? Yes, you can. Now, yes, I would agree with that. They're not rushing Ulduar, and I'm fine with that. Yeah? I've said in previous shows that I would have preferred there to be content faster. However, this is where we are right now, and there's no point reminiscing when you have to be looking to the future. Ulduar is going to come out in this time frame. We have to accept that. What we don't want is to pressure Blizzard into releasing it early and it being buggy and incomplete and not as good as it should be. It's like you don't rush a masterpiece. Yes, I think that it should have been out on release, or at least, 2 months after release. Yes, I think the pacing of their content was wrong, but this is where we are now. So let's just concentrate on the future, because otherwise it's just entirely depressing. Now, Nax is not as challenging as Ulduar, we know this. Ulduar is going to be more challenging. They've got all of these hard modes in, because this is what they think people now want. Whether or not that's right, well, we're gonna find out. It might end up being great, it might not. This is uncharted waters here. I don't know whether or not I am going to enjoy Ulduar with the hard modes. I don't know whether or not my guild is going to care enough to do the hard modes. I imagine that it will. I don't know whether or not it'll do it on a weekly basis. I suppose that probably depends on how fun they are in hard mode. Because if they're not fun, then we won't. Yeah? It's simple as that. It's like saying, oh, well, maybe the hard mode of Loatheb was Spore Loser. Where you don't kill any of the spores. Admittedly, that's not a hard mode, it's an achievement, but the lines blur between the two. One gives a reward, one doesn't. They're all pretty much the same thing. It makes Loatheb harder, but it also makes Loatheb more boring. So it depends on how good those hard modes are as to whether or not it's going to succeed, and it's going to convince players that, yes, they should be doing hard modes on a weekly basis because they are enjoyable, they are fun, they are challenging, they are rewarding. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. Anyway, you can continue to email throughout the show, themorlock@gmail.com, or tweet me, and TotalBiscuit. Actually, I did get a tweet here from The Needy, who says, I'm bored of pulling people through raids just to gear them up, since they can't be bothered to do it themselves. Well, if you're in a guild like that, I would suggest you go find a better guild, because no guild should ever be doing that. Now, the good news from the PTR, and indeed this one came directly from a certain dev whose name I forget. It might actually have been a Ghost Crawler quote. I will check that. I will find that out for you. Here's the source. Now, the person who said this was Bornak, specifically, who said, I would not expect Algernon or Yogg-Saron to appear on the PTR. And he also says, surprises are fun. Yes, indeed they are. Now, it's interesting because while a lot of you might say, that's great, that's fantastic, funnily enough, most of you aren't actually going to be affected by that. I'm not either. My guild's pretty good, but we're not going to be getting any world firsts. Let's face it. We're not, maybe not even realm firsts. We are competing with the Legacy, who's like a top 20 guild in the world. Not a chance. Oh, we will fight him, but but we've also got Loke's List on the server, and, good guilds like that. We've got Security on Alliance side, who's also at least a top 50 guild. So we got good guilds in our server, and while we are good, we're not that good. So we'll be competitive, but we're not going to be getting the firsts. So does it matter to us? Because by the time we get to those bosses, surely the strategies are going to be available. Well, the answer, I suppose, can come in two different ways. One depends on how much self-control, how much restraint your guild has. And you can argue that it's a good thing that the bosses aren't going to be put on the PTR because it's going to take longer for strategies to appear. Therefore, there will be less time in which to read them. And less temptation to do so. However, that is something of a tenuous argument, because some guild leaders, and this is not wrong, you've got to accept this, this is not a wrong way of playing, there is no right or wrong way to raid in this respect. Some raid leaders say, we're reading the strategy, they explain the strategy in a detailed manner, and they don't go in blind, and they don't just learn as they go. They know because they've seen the videos and they've watched the fight, and they have read the strategies inside out, they know them from the top of their head, they have memorized them. Is that a wrong way of playing? No. Is going in blind and learning yourself a wrong way of playing? No, it's not. Neither of those are a wrong way of raiding, and it just depends on your guild. Now, the opposing argument is, of course, that no, it doesn't affect you because you're going to read the strategies, and whether or not this content has been available from the start in the PTR, or whether or not it's only been killed a couple of days ago, doesn't affect you because you weren't the ones who killed it first. I think there's a lot of merit to both. What I do think it does, though, is give a particular boost in morale and interest to the raiding community. Now, the raiding community is a very tenuous thing. I would say that the raiding community is a very fragmented community. A lot of it exists on, say, sites like Elitist Jerks. A lot of it exists on the Arenas and Raids and Dungeons subforum, on the forums on WorldOfWarcraft.com and WildishEurope.com. And, of course, they exist on individual realms and battle groups and all stuff like that. It gives encouragement and it gives something to shoot for those guys, because it gives and returns the sense of wonder in a very small amount to WoW. And that is something that raiders have lost a long time ago. Most of us have been playing since launch. I don't get a sense of wonder from things anymore. But what I do is if I see a new encounter that I am not familiar with, and it's a suitably epic encounter, then I can recapture some, not all, but some, of that feeling. That sense of mystery, the sense of wonderment, because it feels new again. And that, I think, is so vitally important. I don't think it's something that is given enough credence and importance, but I just think it's vital. Now, ensuring that the element of competition is in there is also important. Now, the element of competition exists whether or not they have done things on the PTR or not, but I would say the competition is significantly more legitimate if bosses have not been killed on the PTR, because that means that everyone is basically starting from an even keel on a level playing field, and it comes entirely down to how much time you can spend raiding and how much skill you have in doing so. Watching the World First competitions is something that people get excited about. And it's not just about fanboyism either. Yes, there is an element of that with some people, but I like watching the competition. Why wouldn't I? I'm interested in that kind of thing. As a raider, I am interested in seeing what the top tier guilds can do. And I'm interested in seeing, will this guild manage it this week? What happened that stopped them? What can we learn from that? That's intriguing to me. I've been following that very closely throughout. Blue Plz has been running, for those who don't know, since 2005. It's possibly the longest running WoW podcast on the net. I'm not entirely sure if that's true, but I'm pretty sure it's close. I don't know of any WoW podcasts that have been running longer than that, but by all means, if you do know, then email themurloc@gmail.com and tell me, and I shall, of course, put my foot squarely in my mouth. That'll be something to see. Now, over that time, I have covered raiding extensively, and I've interviewed various guilds: Nihilum, Curse, Method, Forte, Death and Taxes. And we followed the World First, I wouldn't say drama, but certainly the competition and the excitement, and I do get psyched up about this kind of things. It is exciting to watch that, because it's masters of their art competing. It's the same reason that you, as, say, a soccer/football player, a casual fan, watch top teams play. Why? I mean, you could just go play it yourself, right? So why are you excited about the Champions League? Well, the reason you're excited about the Champions League is you're watching people who are just masters of their art compete. And that is a pugilistic gladiatorial contest, which is entertaining and heart-pumping and adrenaline-rousing. It's wonderful. And I think that raiding does capture that. Sadly, more so than arenas at the moment. I think it always has, actually. While arenas were touted as the great esport, the real competition and the real sport was actually happening with competing for world first kills. That's always been the way. And hopefully it will continue to be that way in the future. Now, what I see from Blizzard here is a very important message. This is, well, it's actually twofold. The first thing is them saying we have confidence in our testing abilities now that indicates we can properly test content. Yeah? We can properly test content and it will be good enough for the player base to consume and it will be working. Yeah? It will work. It will provide a challenge not based on a cock block or rooster block, as we say, kind of politically correct term. Yes. Will not provide a cock block based on having bugs and an encounter that doesn't work. We'll provide one on the basis that it's hard, genuinely challenging. That's what we're looking for. And the other part of this is a nod towards the cutting-edge raiders that says, we know what you want. We know that if this is on the test realm, you will test it because you, of course, are competitive and will take every advantage you can get. But you prefer that it's not there. We recognise that. We recognise that there is more work on our part by not having you guys test the content. And we've got to make sure that it works ourselves. We don't get you to do the heavy lifting. We recognise that, but we think it is important that you guys get the opportunity to have a genuine world-first contest again, and to see some new content that you haven't seen before, and compete to kill it first. We recognise that, and this is what we're giving you. We're giving you these two bosses, both with hard modes. I believe one, in fact, is exclusively hard mode, Algernon. We're going to give these to you, and we're going to see how you do. Put your money where your mouth is. Can you do anything other than praise Blizzard for that? No, you can't. I think that is genius. It is Blizzard waking up to the fact that, yes, the hardcore raiding player base, and indeed, just the casual raiding player base, does find value in this kind of thing, and should be supported. Especially after what's been happening over the last 5 months. We've stuck it out, and we're hopefully going to get rewarded, and I can only give praise to Blizzard for that. I think they are really now seeing the writing on the wall, and they are acting on it. Vitally important. My name is TotalBiscuit. You're listening to Blue Plz here on WoW Radio. We'll be back with the Illusion of Choice right after this. Enjoy. You're listening to the podcast and archive of Blue Plz. Music was removed due to copyright concerns. If you'd like to hear the music, tune in live on Fridays at 8 p.m. British Standard Time. That is 3 p.m. EST on WCRadio.com. Yes, indeed, folks, you're tuning in to Blue Plz here on WoW Radio with myself, TotalBiscuit. Now, just before the Illusion of Choice, I'm going to read out a couple more of these emails regarding the content damaging your guild and perhaps taking a break from WoW. I've got one here from Josh, also known as, actually, it might not be him. Let's say, yes, Clariza on Crush Ridge US. That's a girl's name. Seriously, stop pretending. It's very mean. Now, he says this, Hey TB, just wanted to send you a quick message about taking a break from WoW. I recently took a break to play another game too, and decided to try out Lord of the Rings Online. This break helped me sit back and relax and have fun for once, because WoW had become a chore for me. Lord of the Rings Online gives a different feel to WoW, as I found the player base more helpful and nice, and the story definitely made the game for me. But it did not have the player backing like WoW, with add-ons and fan sites like WoW Ready and WoWhead. If they had more player backing, I don't know if I would have come back to WoW. That makes a very interesting point. Also, he asks to give a shout out to Chinodi on Crush Ridge US. There you go. Shout out so given. The interesting point that it's making there is that it's like, I wonder, would I have come back to WoW if they had all of this support? Well, that's interesting. I mean, Lord of the Rings Online doesn't allow add-ons. That's something you've got to bear in mind. There are no add-ons because they don't allow them to be there. Yeah. Now, is it the community that brought you back here? Because you said the community is more helpful and nice, but maybe the community here is a bit more creative and a bit more supportive of its game. I don't know. Maybe it is. Or did you come back here just because of all of the stuff, the outside meta stuff that sprung up as a result of WoW? The wider community, as we call it. I don't know. It's an interesting point to muse on at any rate. Now, we'll do one more before we do the illusion of choice, and that's this. This one comes from Panicmonger from Ocean Dome EU, and he says this. Hey TB, I just tuned into WoW Radio for the first time tonight and heard you talk about raid issues. A lot of guilds have right now, and you nailed it. It's a shame that WoW has turned into what it has now, and it's killing raiders. I myself have cleared an Extramus pre-DBC and loved it, but when I ran through it in Wrath, I couldn't help but let go some tears. That's a bit excessive, don't you think? Anyway, it's pathetic what they did to the best raid ever, and since it's basically the only proper raid in Wrath, it gets mind-numbing pretty damn fast. Some of our core players quit or took breaks from Ulduar, until Ulduar at any rate. We can easily manage without them, but it just sucks. I don't miss their character, but I miss them as a person. Enough with the emotions, though. What you said about the somewhat higher-ranking guilds and their egos clashing is right on. We have the same problem. When we can progress, we are flawless, but when we're stuck like this, we tend to nerd rage over the smallest things. Our guild in a normal state is already incredibly hostile, in a fun sort of competitive manner, but they are all pretty damn good at arguing. If they clash, it's scary, myself included. I have not taken a break, and I don't want to take one either, despite it being insanely tedious. Everything was fine when we all got the server first kills, scored world top 50 and stuff like that, but now we're just ants. Next to that, we also have some guilds who are trying to compete with us, some made only to beat us. We know we're better, but with all of this stress coming at us, some of us might give in. Oh well, I'm starting to rant, I'm not making too much sense either. P.S. We killed a fair few Ulduar bosses, and so far, it's so-so. That's from Panicmonger, Ocean Dome EU. Well, again, the hard modes, I think, will probably give a little bit more action in that respect, and yes, I imagine some of the bosses will be a bit so-so, a bit easy, but I would hope that there will be enough in there to justify. You know, there's 14 bosses, some of them have got to be pretty fun, and I'm hoping hard modes will make a difference there. But yeah, I do see the point. Something that I noticed was that I think our guild is actually getting worse as a result of doing poorly tuned content, and by poorly tuned I'm meaning too easy. We're slacking, and we're not as good as we used to be. I'm pretty sure that I used to be way better. You know, I make the occasional silly mistake, and I'm like, I would have never made this in AQ40. I would have never made this in Black Temple. I'd have been 100% alert 100% of the time. Because that's what the instance allowed me to do, because it was hard enough to justify it. But with this stuff, no. No, I can't justify really focusing that much, because I'm just not enjoying it so much. Oh well, roll on Ulduar. Time for the illusion of choice! Yes, indeed. This one is from Bunkerface, who's actually sitting in my room right now. Say hello.
Hey there.
Yes, indeed. One of the listeners. He's over in England to visit some friends down in London, as I recall.
Yeah, true.
Yep, going down to London to see the sights, and so he saw the sights of Newcastle, of which consisted mostly of rain, Pizza Hut, and game stores. It was awesome. Oh, anyway. So, he actually provided me an illusion of choice in writing, which is the first time that's ever happened. If you do want to send me mail, I'll set up a P.O. box for you, seriously. And you can send me a pigeon, and you can put it in my mailbox if you so wish. Now, he even has a title called The Grand Conspiracy. I don't think this is a conspiracy, really. Do you honestly think this is a conspiracy?
No.
No, you don't. You just made it up.
Yeah.
There you go. Now, he says this. Will Blizzard make achievement points spendable as a reaction to the feud about achievement points being important or not within raids? I'm of course talking about spending them on gear and other tangible stuff. That's a great question. It's been something that Blizzard has been planning for a while. They have been saying that they will allow you to spend achievement points on stuff, yeah? They weren't specific as to what, but on stuff. Now, what they did say from the start, and I think this might be something they may change, is that achievement points would only be spent on things that did not affect your character. So, like pets and titles and stuff like that. Now, even that, though, would give a reason for people to earn achievement points. It would give a reason for them to do this stuff, because there is a reward and they might like it. Say they gave an option of 20 pets that required 3,000 achievement points each or something ridiculous like that. And they were all pretty cool. Like, you could have a pet octopus on a motorcycle with lightsabers. How about that? That would be a great idea. Or you could have a pet floating evil Ashbringer sword. You know, a mini Ashbringer, like a little chibi Ashbringer. All sorts of stuff like that. A tiny angry Arthas that would run alongside you, screaming at you, saying he was going to dominate the world in a really squeaky accent. I can simulate this right now. Something like that. Something to that effect. Yes, facepalm. Now, that's the kind of thing that some players, including raiders, might go for. Particularly if there's a lot of them, there's a lot of variety, and it takes quite a bit of work to get it. That's the kind of thing they may go for. They like doing that with rare mounts, for instance. Rare mounts are something that raiders like. Pets, perhaps not so much, but if they were cool enough, then maybe. Just maybe. I don't think that, at least they initially said they wouldn't give gear, but I think this is something that they could possibly change. Because the achievements now, some of the stuff that you've got, indicates very clearly the rate of progression that you are going at and what you have achieved. Oh look, achievements are indicating what you have achieved. Shock horror. Never expected that to happen, did we? But say you've beaten Sartharian 3 Drakes, yeah? Now, would that, in your opinion, and this is a completely rhetorical question because I'm not going to allow you to answer it, would that justify you receiving gear that's like maybe tier 7, 7.5 style level, yeah, from achievement points? Spending achievement points to maybe fill in gaps in your gear. Is that justifiable when you have the achievement for Sartharian 3 Drakes? So you're taking away from the argument the element of, oh, well, you are giving gear for running around and kissing people 10 times, or hugging animals or stuff like that? And of course the response is, well, the thing is, these guys have already done all of this stuff. So why not reward them with that gear for doing silly things? Don't reward people who just do silly things. That's silly. Now, don't give them anything worthwhile. Give them pets or whatever. Give them novelty items, cosmetics. But don't give them raid gear. I suppose you could maybe argue that. Now, the other point is that it would give some players tangible to shoot for, and it would soften or lessen the argument between raiders. You know, we can divide them into the new school of raiders and the old school of raiders. The old school of raiders doesn't care about achievements, because that's not what we've been doing for the past 4 years. We've been killing bosses and getting loot. The new school of raiders is like, oh, we should do it this, we should try this. And there's conflict between the two of them, because they don't share the same opinion by any stretch of the imagination. And from the old school, I think achievements are silly. It's like, achievements are technically already existed. If I wanted to, I could have done, you know, let's just say this. If I wanted to, I could have done Baron Geddon while blowing up 5 other members of my raid. That's an achievement. That's the same kind of silly stuff, yeah? Or I could have done Major Domo without crowd controlling anything, yeah? There's another achievement. It's a similar kind of thing. I could have done that, but if I'd asked somebody to do that in Classic WoW, they'd have looked at me like I was on crack. It's like, what the hell? Why would you do such a thing? That's stupid. Get out of the guild. But you try and do it now, just because you get a merit badge for it, and suddenly it's a legitimate form of content. Some people don't agree with that. You could legitimize it by giving tangible rewards. That might work. I still think there's going to be a split, but I think that at least the old school raiders would see the point a little bit more. Now, I'm not saying that either playstyle is right or wrong, because the new school is equally valid. Some people like to get achievements. That's cool. I don't object to the achievement system being there on principle. What I've always objected to, certainly over the past several months, is the people that say, oh, well, you haven't done all the content because you haven't done all the achievements. Because it's optional content that serves no practical purpose other than the personal gratification of some, not all, of the player base. It's very important to remember that. Don't think anyone's right or wrong on the issue, but everyone is entitled to their opinion, and the old school particularly are used to a certain way of going about things, and you can't simply ask them to change at the drop of a hat. This may help the transition. It may make achievements more acceptable. So yeah, I think that's a good suggestion. Blizzard, if you're listening, and I know you are, have a think about it. Shout-out time, folks, for the last 5 minutes of the show. You can email linthemoloch@gmail.com. That is themoloch@gmail.com if you wish to have a shout-out on this particular show. Or you can PM me on IRC. That's irc.mmorc.com. # WOW Radio, or click the chat button on the top of the screen on wcradio.com. Alternatively, you can tweet me. Just wash your hands afterwards, eh? You can tweet me via twitter.com/TotalBiscuit for shout-outs. In the meantime, a shout-out to all of the enthusiastic Arcanist Belt applicants that have been whispering at me in game a lot. Yes, there are like 52 applicants. If any of the guys who have applied to Arcanist Belt are actually listening and have not previously been in the guild, you're accepted. All of you. Every last one of you. I am going to be on Sunday, yeah? I'm going to log in on Sunday at 4 p.m. server time, right? If you want to be an Arcanist Belt and you want to start leveling up, because we need some extra players, because we've got a bunch of people who have just basically gone off to, let their WoW subscription lapse, so we're a bit short. If you want to be an Arcanist Belt, and you've applied on the website, and you haven't been kicked out of the guild already, yeah? I'm not re-inviting the people that we kicked for sucking or being terrible. Then come to Anachronos at 4 p.m. server time on Sunday, and I will invite you. Or Iomo will invite you. That's EU Anachronos, by the way. I will invite you, or Iomo will invite you, or any of the officers, so you can whisper myself, TotalBiscuit, or Iomo. Because apparently he loves being spammed. He's a massive fan of it. So yeah, do that, come level up with us, and come have some fun in the old school raids. I'm sure you will enjoy it. Now, shout-out time. Shout-out to Galafor, Arcanon, and Lolo G for having epic WoW LAN parties. I never really understood that, but I suppose there could be some appeal in throwing bricks at the guy who's just stolen your epic. Can I get a shout-out to Duncorp to High Grade, my guild on Masrigo EU? That's from Limus. Yes, you can. Masrigo for the win. Please shout-out to the Horde content on Duskwood, and to yourself, because you're rock saw, whatever that means. Can I get a shout-out to Snickerschnee? Is that the way you pronounce it? Snickerschnee, yes. And shout-out to my guild, HAKD, and Great Show TV, that's from Snickerschnee. A shout-out to the Cardboard again, and a shout-out to everyone on the IRC channel, to everyone who are studying for their exams. Why does Blizzard always release new content at the same time as universities have exams? The answer, Dayster, is because they hate you and they want you to fail. And they also don't like Denmark. A shout-out to Grom Hellscream, teach the ancestors to scream like a true orc. Rah. A shout-out to a bunch of random blogs, such as Aspect of the Hair and Skeleton Jack, and most of all, to BRK, who apparently almost wrecked his marriage by playing too much WoW. Quit it! You're a talented guy, we want you back. So go and get it sorted out, and come back. That's from Archeon, from the Cult of Emrats. A shout-out to BlizzCon 2009, and a shout-out to Random Loot on Thorazin US for taunting Grobulus and wiping the raid on an immortal attempt. Awesome Ret Paladin. You suck. A shout-out to TB, the great show from Exalterigo. Still the best and sexiest mage in the US. That is debatable, because I have a US alt. A shout-out to Uldum US, the foul pit that spawned Elite Maiden. Good lord. That sounds rather terrifying to me. I want to give a shout-out to you for actually reading my mail. That's from Risiki. How about I retroactively do not read your mail? A shout-out to Galafor, Arcan... No, that's the same one! Don't send me an email and a shout-out to increase your chances. That's evil. A shout-out to Pipo, to his guild, Inner Focus, on Loon US, who is proud to be going to Ulduar completely blind. He is hoping we set a trend. That sound was terrifying. The tiny squeaky Arthur's pet. Good freaking grief, I want one. That's from Dienta. Yes, the power of... What's the word? Ad-lib. That's rather ironic. I've completely forgotten what I was going to say. I'm out here, guys. My name's TotalBiscuit. You've been listening to Blue Plz on WCRadio.com. Check out our other fine shows on iTunes and on WCRadio.com. If you feel like donating, you can do so. WowRadioDonations@gmail.com via PayPal. The next show to come up today will, of course, be the one and only Wow Things Considered, 7 p.m. EST, only on WCRadio.com. Thanks for listening, guys. You've been a fantastic audience. Good night. You have been listening to the podcast and archive of Blue Plz, a show that airs exclusively on WCRadio.com on Fridays at 8 p.m. British Standard Time. That's 3 p.m. EST. You can check out our archives on our website at WCRadio.com and subscribe to our RSS feeds. Don't forget to rate and review us using iTunes, and if you wish to leave constructive criticism, that is always appreciated. Head over to WCRadio.com/forum and post in the threads there. Thank you for listening.